Hello everyone, and welcome to our demonstration on the recent enhancements to the timekeeping system in Design Manager. My name is Brad, and I'll be hosting the demonstration today. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane on your GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. And lastly, if you miss a portion of the webinar or want to review any of our past discussions, go to our Help Center at knowledge.designmanager.com, go to the Webinars menu, select Recorded Webinars, and you can view any of our past discussions at your leisure. In today's webinar, we'll be discussing the new array of features to our time billing module, particularly the time import function. As this webinar is specifically focusing on the recent changes to time billing, we won't be reviewing the basic features of that module, as they're discussed at length in our time billing webinar, also available on our Help Center on the recorded webinars or our YouTube channel as well. So you can go there to review the basic topics of time billing. As usual, I'll be demonstrating how to access the features in both Design Manager and Design Manager Professional. If you would like to see a function in one platform or the other, just ask in the questions pane. However, as much of the timekeeping system, particularly these new features, are identical in both platforms, I'll primarily be working in Design Manager to avoid unnecessary switching between the platforms. Okay, the very first topic to cover would be the new options, settings, and fields throughout the software for time billing. Let's begin with the company level features first. To access your company information window, you go to File, Company Settings, and in Professional, you do the exact same thing, File, Company Information, and Settings. We then go to the Advanced button, and we click on our Time tab. And if you've been here before, you might notice that there are a whole array of new options here. But some of these features are going to default down to new projects where they're available for customizing at the project level, while others are only available at the company level, thereby affecting all projects throughout the software. And while we're here, we might as well quickly review some of the settings that have been available for quite some time, just to review and see how they work in place with the new features. First of all, we have our default location for time entries. Now this setting will default down to all new projects, and when you're using the new item selection when adding time entries, this is going to be the location that will be automatically entered, which of course can be changed. Similarly, we have our default sales category for time entries. Again, this would default down to any new projects, so when we're adding our time entries using the new item option, this would be the defaulted sales category, which can of course be changed, unless we have the allow entries to be joined to items with the default sales category option. This also defaults to new projects, and this indicates that the user must use the sales category selected above when either entering in new time entries for new items or even when joining entries to an existing time item. That sales category must be selected. All three of these, as shown here, would be the default for new users of Design Manager. So all of our brand new users out there will have the time location, professional services, sales category, and the only allow entries to be joined to items with the default sales category options configured. Now, how about some of the more recent settings? First, we have our default enter, start, and end time. This option, when adding new time entries, would have our enter time selected automatically for us. That's an option that's only available at the company setting, so it's either turned on for all projects or turned off. Update item quantity with total component hours. Another company-wide selection, and this is going to automatically update the quantity on a time item that has time entries joined against it. What does that mean? Let's take a look add an example. So for our Carter's Pennington home, I have an item for time billing in June, and we can see that I have 3 time entries or time components recorded against them. Looking on our component grid on the right-hand side, we can see that there are respective hours of 1.5, 3, and 3.75, which is a total of 8.25 hours. Using the new Update Item Quantity option, look at our item, the quantity on the item itself will automatically update as we add more and more time entries against it. And this is particularly convenient, so you no longer have to manually update the item quantity, so the total hours will appear appropriately on the invoice to the client. Okay. We have our new Create Item options. You can now choose to have your time entries configured automatically to either create a new item or to join to existing items. And this can be configured on a per project basis. Let's examine each one of these. New item. That's going to force each time entry to create a brand new item in the project so that each time entry ultimately will be listed explicitly on the invoice to the client. The Join To Item option. This allows time entries only to be joined to an existing time item. Now this yields a more consolidated invoice as only a single item will be listed for a particular week or month or activity. And the Join To item has its own subset of options. We have our only to uninvoiced dated items. This option forces time entries to be joined only to time items that have been configured for recording time billing over a particular time frame, which we'll see shortly. But we also have the new Automatically Create Monthly Item option. This is a fantastic new feature that allows Design Manager to automatically create a time item within your project for the month of the first time entry. So you don't need to remember to do that each month. And we'll see how that works as well. And lastly, we have the User Can Choose option. This allows you to decide how to enter the time entries, either by having a new time item created or joined to an existing. The User Can Choose option is going to be the default setting for all existing projects for our current users of Design Manager. Brand new users to Design Manager will find that the Join To Item option is selected along with both of the only to uninvoiced dated items and automatically create monthly item settings as well. So our brand new Design Manager users will have it configured in that mechanism. Again, you could certainly change that to suit your needs. Lastly, we have another company-wide setting, which is Allow Import to Override Design Manager Rates. What this indicates is that the rate listed in a file for importing time will override any rate settings for employees within Design Manager. And this presumes that the rates have been reviewed in the file and are trusted as the most accurate of the two. And we'll see how that functions a little bit later as well. Now, I did mention that those are the company settings which default down to the projects on certain options. And if we look at perhaps the Brown project, we can see on our defaults, advanced time tab here, those are the options that are available, as I said, on the project level. Our default location and sales category, the allowing entries to be joined to a sales category, and the create items options. So all of those can be configured on a per project basis, depending on the desires of your client and how you want to function with them. Okay, let's start solidifying some concepts by looking at the new features on the item window. So if we again continue with our Brown project, I'm going to create a new item, and I'm going to select the time budget option, which has been in Design Manager for some time. Notice, upon doing so, a few things occur. One, the units get set conveniently to hours, and my location and sales category automatically are defaulted to the ones we just saw on my Project Advanced Options window. A new feature, however, is the Record Time From selection. Now this allows us to set the time frame for which time entry should be dated when joining to this particular item. In fact, if we use the only allow to join to dated items options, which we just discussed, Design Manager is going to prevent you from adding a time entry with a date outside of the recorded range. So if we create an item, let's call this time for June 2016, now we can go ahead and put the month of June as our range. So select June 1st to June 30th. For our professional users, it works the exact same way. So over in the professional platform, for our project specifications, the Brown Newtown Home, add an item, select our time budget, and you can see all of the exact functionality as we just saw in Design Manager with our default location and sales category, our units being selected, and there we have our Record Time From option here as well. So if we go ahead and save our brand new item for our time billing in June, we can see how this comes into play over on our time billing window. So now, if we add a time entry, join it to our Brown Newtown Home, select designing, we're defaulting to today's date, which is how Design Manager standardly operates. We have our enter time selected as our company indicates. But what happens if also we can see Design Manager's already selecting our pre-configured time item for June. And if we even change this, say we put it to 4th of July, Design Manager takes out that item because we don't have an item configured for July yet, and will even warn me to either create one or make my date appropriately. So there's a whole new set of checks and balances in there. But if we go back to today, right away Design Manager is going to find the item that is applicable for our date of today. Go ahead and put some time in here and save our item. So that's how the Record Time From feature on the item window works. Very convenient to prevent you from inadvertently joining time entries to items that are outside of the month, etc., or even invoiced as well, which could be problematic. Let's take a look at another example. Back in our project and specifications, if we look at our Carter's Brigantine Beach Home project, and we review our time settings here, we can see that it's also set to join to time to item, but we have that new automatically create monthly item option selected. So now, if we go to our employee time window, and let's use that project as our example, use designing again. Right away, Design Manager has the reference number. It's set to a question mark because it's not sure what the next reference number might be. It'll figure that out on itself. But notice in the description area it says new item for June will be created. So Design Manager is recognizing the date, and it's going to automatically create that time item for us. In fact, if we even change this to the 4th of July again, guess what? Now our reference description says a new item for July. So Design Manager is going to handle the creation of those time items for us. Again, really trying to make your data entry for all of your time billing needs as fast and accurate as possible. And let's say that's 10:30 again. And if we save our time entry for the Carter's Pennington home, back on our specifications, we can see underneath our time location, there is our time entry for June automatically made for us. Okay. Now, we've gone through some of the new settings and options in Design Manager for our time billing needs. Let's turn our attention to the real center of the new time billing features, the time entry import window. The new time import allows you to import a file containing your recorded time into Design Manager, where you can then review and correct it and ultimately post the entries against your projects for billing purposes. What kind of files can be imported? Well, the most commonly used formats would include Excel files, such as the XLS or XLSX formats, comma-separated value files, or commonly known as CSV files. You can also use text files, which end in .txt. And even iCalendar or ICS files can be imported as well. What type of programs can produce these files? Many. Obviously, you could use Google Sheets or Excel to create your XLS and XLSX files, and many applications on your smartphone, such as Hours Tracker or Harvest, can produce any number of acceptable file types. Basically, if you have an application, we suggest if it can make a CSV or comma-separated value file, odds are you can import it into Design Manager, as we'll see. One program that is not supported is Apple Numbers, as that program creates a proprietary file format that cannot be used by other programs. So those will not be able to be imported under any mechanism. All of that being said, perhaps the most convenient way to record your time is to use the Design Manager time template. Let's take a look. Go to our employee time. Going to need to input a valid employee. We'll use Ashley Brand and the date range. And notice that our Get Excel Timesheet button is now enabled. This only works when entering time by employee, obviously. When using the By Project option, notice that we don't even have our little Get Excel Sheet button. Design Manager's time template is intended to be used by a single employee covering one or more projects, rather than a timesheet for multiple employees for single projects. So to create our custom time sheet, we need to be entering for employee, have an employee entered, and when we do, we can see our Get Excel Timesheet is enabled. And if we select this, Design Manager is going to say a timesheet will be created in Excel for Ashley Brandon, as we can see, that is our employee, to enter hours between the dates of 6/1/2016 and 6/30/2016, which is our date range. And this will actually create an email for us with that timesheet attached. Now, I don't have my Outlook up and running, but I do have an example of that exact timesheet for our review. And it is right here. Design Manager automatically creates this format for us. So we can see our company name along the top, my timesheet for the employee that we designated, and we even have our starting and ending date ranges formatted for us. Let's take a look at some of the deeper features here, because I feel it really shows off the skill of some of our development team. Along the bottom, where we can look at our various sheets, we have our timesheet, but we also have sheets for project and time activity lookup. Our project lookup, Design Manager has taken all of our active projects and created them on a sheet for us. The same with our time activities. Well, that's all well and good, but what is this really doing for us? On our timesheet, our project becomes a menu that is driven off of the project lookup, and the same with our time activity. We can even customize this at this point. For example, in our project lookup, I might never be recording time against my storage room, which I use to maintain a small inventory. So if I delete it off our project lookup, on my timesheet tab, I've now removed that storage location project. So Design Manager is going to be having all these checks and balances for us. Let's add a couple entries to see how this really functions. So let's say we have an entry for our Brown New Townhome start date. Let's say we put in July 4th again. Design Manager is going to say to us, nope, that is not acceptable. Why? Because it's outside of our starting and ending dates. So Design Manager's time template has some innate checks and balances in there to ensure that you're recording the proper time. We change that back to, let's see, 6/3, Design Manager will accept that. The start time. We just need to enter the start time and the hours, and Design Manager will calculate the end time upon importing, as we'll see in a little bit. Let's say this is 10 a.m., 2 hours, and we'll select the activity of design. And then we could do the same. Oh, also we have our non-billable option here. You don't need to put anything into the non-billable. You can leave it blank if you're intending to bill the client for that entry. If you do want to record it yet not bill the client, simply input a Y or select it off the menu, and Design Manager will mark it as non-billable upon the import. Let's add another one for the Browns. Notice now I can just type B for Brown and Design Manager will populate the cell for me. 6/6, about 9 a.m., 3.75, designing, and so on. This is a very convenient way to record all of our time. Most of us are at least somewhat familiar with inputting information into some spreadsheet program, and we can do so very rapidly with the minimal amount of effort on the Design Manager time template. And I can go on and add a whole bunch of entries here, but to keep ourselves on track for our demonstration, I've already done so on another spreadsheet. So I've added some entries against the Carter's Pennington home and Hilson Pocono project as well. Okay, now let's see how this import really works in Design Manager. To access it, we simply go to our employee time window and click the New Import button along the bottom. And that brings up our time entry import window. Let's shrink that down just a little bit. For our professional users, exact same. Over on our project tab for management, employee time, and there's our import button as well, right to our time entry import window. Top left of the window, we see our import time entries frame with two options, all entries or within a date range. All entries is going to import everything in our file regardless of the date. So if we have just entries for June, we're fine. Now, within date range, if I had entries on my sheet with for both June and July, you can use the within date range to narrow the scope only to June. So I can simply put in 6/1 to 6/30, my within date range, and I would exclude any entries that I may have residually from May or have already posted into July. One note about the with date range. This is very important when you're using an iCalendar or other calendar file for importing, as they're going to have your appointments since you began using the calendar application. So if you don't want all of them coming in, be sure to use a date range, otherwise you'll have imported entries for years and years. To select our file, we click the import button. And I have our timesheet that we've already added our entries on. Select it on our Select File window and click the Open button. And upon doing so, our Import Data window for time is going to be shown. And this is where we're going to associate, or as we call it, map our columns from the imported file to the available information in Design Manager. So on our left-hand side are our source fields. And notice they correspond perfectly to our columns in our template. On the right-hand side is the available information for time billing in Design Manager. All we have to do now is map or link the two together. And once we import a particular file, Design Manager is going to remember this association. So using a consistent file format when importing is very helpful to make this process as quick as possible, so you don't have to remap each time. If I'm using the same file format of our time template, once I do this a single time, Design Manager will remember it for us. So let's go ahead and walk through it. Our project is going to map to our project code. Start date would be our entry date. Start time would be our start date, but more importantly, start time. Hours, that goes to hours. Activity, go to our activity code. Description, to description. And non-billable to non-billable. The import first row or record option. If you're using a file format that doesn't have column headings, as we're showing here, select this option so Design Manager will be sure to get that record. Otherwise, Design Manager is going to presume that the first record in the file is for column headings and always ignores it. If we go ahead and click OK, we can now see all of our imported time entries for our review. It is important to understand that these entries are not yet recorded to the respective projects. You won't see them in specifications, on your new invoice window, etc. We're still reviewing the entries at this point. And if we look, we can see we have our totals conveniently listed along the top for our billable hours, our billable amount, non-billable hours, and total hours. All of our entries come up sorted in ascending date order, with the oldest being listed first. But like most grids in Design Manager, you can just click the column heading to sort by project or activity, etc. Another of the benefits of using Design Manager's time template is that you're nearly guaranteed that all of the information will import into Design Manager without making a lot of manual adjustments. Now, I'll do an example shortly using a different file format to highlight some of the features to adjust the imported entries, but using Design Manager's time template really expedites the process for us. I used our three different projects, the Brown home, Carter's home, and the Hilson Pocono home, as each one is configured really differently for recording time. The Hilson Pocono home is set to make new items for each time entry. The Carter's Pennington home is going to join time entries to a monthly time item that's created automatically. And the Brown's home also uses the join to method, but requires that a time item must manually be created, because that's not using the automatically create monthly time item. Now, the Hilson entries, well, they're all set. They're configured to make a new item, as we can see in the far right column, and all of the information is being properly displayed. Design Manager has them set and ready for importing. Now, one option is the hold column here. The hold column, if I did want to, for whatever reason, not import or not commit my Hilson Pocono home entries, I could click hold, and hold automatically takes the import off. And if I went to record the project, I would not commit those particular entries. So again, you have full control over not only reviewing, but indicating what time entries should ultimately be committed to the project. Clicking import again automatically takes the hold designation off. Now, with the Brown entries, we need to tell Design Manager to which item there should be joined, as we don't have a monthly item being automatically created. Design Manager is automatically alerting us to that fact by having the item column in red indicating what needs to be changed, and has already placed it into fixed mode. You cannot make a fixed a entry that's designated as fixed to import because it must be corrected first. So again, Design Manager's import is really having checks and balances as to create proper time entries. Now, to fix the entry, we can simply click the Edit button, and upon the Time Import Entry window, we can see all the information already listed for us. Now, Design Manager's already done some work for us. It's gone and checked our project and found a time entry that has the appropriate date range. Recall that we created that one for Brown with the time for June, with the June month in it. So Design Manager's found it for us. And if we click OK here, just like that, we've corrected our entry, and Design Manager takes it off of the fixed indication and has it ready for import. Now we can do the same for the next entry. I can click Edit, or just double click. I've already got my time item selected, and clicking OK, once again, satisfies the condition, causing our entry to be corrected and ready for importing. Now, let's turn our attention for a moment to the Carter's time. As this is our first time using the time import, I've already created a time entry in June. So I don't want to do it again. I can make some further adjustments. So if I edit here, I could change my item selection not to create a second monthly item, but we can use our time for June. Just like that. Now, all of our entries are ready for importing. But let's explore some additional features and benefits before recording them to the respective projects. The ability to edit. We just saw how we can edit a time entry when we selected our time item for the Brown project, but any information can be updated. We could change the description, we could increase or decrease hours, mark an entry as non-billable, etc. And let's say we want to change one of our entries for the Carter. We could say selecting merchandise for master bedroom, which is the project we're working on for them. So of course you can make any edits that you desire from here. We're using this as a nice workspace to review our entries. We have the ability to add. We can add a time entry on the import window as well, in case you forgot to record it into your import file or simply had some additional entries that you wanted to record. So we could add one, and then just put in the appropriate information. Ashley again, project, let's put that on the Hilson project. Activity, selecting merchandise, 6/13. And let's say we have 9 a.m. to 11:15. When we put in our time range, Design Manager automatically calculates the hours for us. And now our item selection. Now recall, the Hilson project is set to create new items, so that's my only option. The Brown project, for example, would show all of the applicable time items available to join, while the Carters would have an option to create a new time entry item or select one that already exists. So Design Manager is allowing us to use any of the options available according to our project default settings. Click OK, and just like that, we've added an entry here as well. Lastly, we could use a delete button. We could just delete an entry that we want to remove from our import grid if it was a duplicate, or we just decided something shouldn't be recorded against the project as well. Now, the combination of the file import, adding, editing, deleting entries, etc., in my opinion, really makes the time import window a workspace to manage all of our entries for services prior to committing them to the projects. As such, there's really a few creative and useful functions on this window. One, as we saw, you can import your entries on a regular basis, perhaps weekly, daily, etc., and you'll allow them to accumulate on our import window. When you're ready to bill for your services, just select the desired entries, put others on hold for future billing, etc. Essentially, you can consistently have your time recorded so you don't lose track of any valuable billable time while simultaneously getting yourself ready for billing. So you're making your invoicing ultimately at the month more convenient while never forgetting to have your entries there input into Design Manager so you're not missing that valuable billing time. In a larger firm, an office manager or perhaps controller can distribute and receive the completed time templates for all the necessary employees. Then they can import each one for a company-wide review of the time for a particular period and easily make any corrections prior to committing the time entries for projects. So it could be used as a master time analysis or time preparation at that level. Another idea, a design assistant or a junior designer could import or record all of their time and then allow the senior designer or principal owner to review in case any entries need to be altered or for billing or removed, etc. And you don't even need to have them log into your Design Manager account to view it. You can export this list right from Design Manager and submit for the owner's review. I can right-click on my grid and click the export. And I could then export my June billing and provide that to my owner or principal for their review. And I've actually done so right here. So I could send this off to my owner, allow them to make any revisions indicating what should or should not be billed, changing anything that they might see fit, and then come back with their edits and put them into my time entry import window. Now, once we're done with all of our edits, all of our changes, any additions we may need to do, at the time when we're fully ready to commit these to the project, all we have to do is click the Record to Projects button. Upon doing so, Design Manager will always warn us. It's going to say, do you wish to record all the entries set for import? It would be excluding, obviously, fixed or held entries. And if we say yes, there they go. 7 entries imported successfully. Our time entry import window is now empty. Now we can see back in our projects, for example, those are all of our Hilson selections that we just created. So with that time import, we can bring entries into Design Manager, make any edits or additions, etc. necessary, and then at our choosing, select them to be committed to ultimately to the projects. One change that is available in the professional platform I want to mention. Our professional users have the ability under Company Information and Settings, Advanced, Time, where they can set their timesheet template. So if the professional users have their own timesheet that they've devised already in Excel, they could override Design Manager's version using the set template. They can then upload it to Design Manager or bring it down to make any additional changes that they want. That's only available at the professional level. So that's using our time import in Design Manager with Design Manager's time template. But as I said before, what if you use another application to record your time? Design Manager can import a number of different file formats. I've already created an export file in the CSV format from an application called Hours Tracker, which is right here. Hours Tracker allows you to input information throughout the program and export it into a CSV. And there's various columns that you can have for the job, clocking in, clocking out, duration, etc. Hours Tracker also has a few spots in the application where you could put in comments or what they call tags. And I've used those to make my import into Design Manager more accurate, which is going to result in less manual adjustments, and we'll see that momentarily. Now, let's go back to our design manager, employee time, back to our import. We'll leave our import time entries set for all entries. Click our import, and now let's use our hours tracker for Ashley. And when we do, notice our import data for time has an entirely different set of source fields, again corresponding to those that were available from hours tracker. And since this is the first time we use this format, we do need to do all of our mapping. So job in this case actually goes to the project name. Clocked in is going to be our start date. Clocked out, end date and time. Our duration would be hours, hourly rate, rate per hour. We don't necessarily care about earnings. Comment. Comment is going to be our activity code. I entered that into my hours tracker automatically so I can use it for our mapping purposes. Same with tags. It's actually going to be our activity name. Comment goes to activity name, while tags goes to our employee comment activity code. Tags goes to employee code. And the rest of the columns, I simply don't need to import into Design Manager. Once I verify everything looks to my liking, go ahead and click OK. And there they are. Now, we can see with all of our easily identifiable red coloring that there are some manual adjustments to be made. For the Carters, we can see that I've used an activity code of admin. Design Managers indicating that there is no such code of admin in Design Manager, and I'm going to need to replace that as that code is invalid. The Hilson Pocono home, if we look, we're not finding our project because in our hours tracker file, it's just called Pocono home. Design Manager does not find anything specifically called Pocono home, so it can't default something to match against. Here's a standing rule. Attempt to make the information recorded in your application match Design Manager as much as possible. So if you call it Hilson Pocono home in Design Manager, be sure to name the project the same in your application. Same with time activities, etc. Doing so will allow your import to work as efficiently as possible. Now, we only have 2 entries for the Hilsons, but if we had dozens and dozens, manually adjusting each one of those would get a bit tedious. We can use the fix features, fix entries feature to update the project code much more efficiently. So I could say, I want to update the project for fixed entries, and I want to change that project code to the Hilson Pocono home. However, if I went ahead and used my update, Design Manager would change all of our fixed entries. I don't want the Carter's Pennington home to go to the Hilson Pocono home, so I can temporarily put those on hold. And now I'm only going to be fixing my Hilson project. We click Update. Design Manager, of course, warn us, and there we go. And just like that, Design Manager has changed our project to the Hilson as desired. It now thinks that all the information is accurate and has put it into import mode for us. But we still have a problem with our Carter's Pennington home with that admin activity. So I could designate those to be fixed, and in this case, let's change our activity simply to design. And if we update those entries, now we have an appropriate activity code allowing us to import. We can also have options to remove entries. For one, we could remove any entries on hold. Maybe we put entries on hold that we were debating whether or not to bill for, or perhaps there were duplicates and needed review, and we just don't want them recorded in the project. I can use the remove entries on hold, and Design Manager will take those out of our time entry import. We could do the exact same for remove entry set to fix. If they're simply deemed unnecessary, we can remove all of the fixed ones as well. Lastly, and the most far-reaching, is the remove all entries, clear the list. So let's imagine that we've imported a large amount of entries from one of our hours keeping applications, and there is quite a bit of manual adjustment being needed. All the project codes are incorrect, all the activities are wrong. We incorrectly mapped our cost to our rate and vice versa. So we can then go back into our application, make the adjustments, and re-import. We could remove all the entries before doing so. So you can easily delete or take out entries from our time entry import window as well. And if we go ahead and record, we've now taken all of the entries from our hours tracker application and brought them into Design Manager. So using Design Manager's template is extremely efficient, as it has lots of features such as the date checking for you, it validates the project and activity, and it's very simple to use. Plus, you're guaranteed to have the most amount of information available for import automatically. But you can use any file format that can be produced into, again, a CSV file, a text file, etc. And with that, that brings us to the end of our discussion on Design Manager's time entry import. We reviewed all the available settings at the company and project levels, and we can further customize how we want to record our time. We saw how to use the time range on the item window for time items to specify acceptable time frames and validate them. And then we reviewed at length the new time entry import window, how to create our time templates, how to import entries from various files, etc. And I hope everyone found some of the features exciting and plan to use them in the future. And I thank everyone for joining us. I hope to hear from you soon, and have a great day.